As the hours tick by, the decision-making at Tottenham Hotspur becomes even more baffling. I made a video literally this morning reacting to the news that Thomas Frank was going to be in charge for the Borussia Dortmund game, saying that I had genuine sympathy for him because it felt like the club were using him as a human shield to hide behind their own incompetence and poor decision-making. A lot of that sympathy has now evaporated, and I understand that Thomas Frank has been put in a difficult position with this decision to bring Dominic Solanke back into the Champions League squad. But justice for Mathys Tel, man. We should get 3 Mathys Tel t-shirts printed and go to the stadium tomorrow. Honestly, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I am going to be doing more daily kind of like reactive content like this, and just to kind of talk about all things Tottenham to kind of keep on top of it. So make sure to subscribe for that. And we're going to be talking about Mathys Tel in this video because I cannot get my head around the decision by Thomas Frank to bring Dominic Solanke back into the Champions League squad at this stage. When it was first mooted that this was going to happen, it sounded a little bit like Thomas Frank had no choice. The wording of the rules are quite vague. Windy from the Extra Inch tweeted this, saying, once the injured or ill outfield player is set to be fielded again, he becomes eligible and or can resume his position in place of his substitute, who must consequently be removed from the list. So the thing to clear up imminently, because I made a video about this on TikTok, and maybe I didn't explain it well enough, but Dominic Solanke can only come back in for Mathys Tel. Dominic Solanke was out injured for 60 plus days at the time that Mathys Tel was brought into the Champions League squad. Therefore, Spurs were allowed to make that change. That is what the UEFA rules state. If you suffer a long-term injury like that, you can make a change and another player can be brought in as almost a like-for-like. So Dominic Solanke can't come back in for a Richarlison. He can't come back in for Kolo Muani. He couldn't come back in for someone like a Ben Davies, who's also just suffered a long-term injury. So it could only be for Mathys Tel. That was the choice that Thomas Frank had to make. And I don't doubt that Thomas Frank has not had it easy when coming to this decision. I just cannot understand the logic behind it whatsoever. You are burning bridges as well with some of your best, most bright, young, exciting talent that could be the future of the football club. And it's no wonder why. This was Thomas Frank's quote on it. The way the rules are, the only option was Dom or Mathys, and I chose Dom because I think Mathys has done very well the last couple of games. And if I could pick from all the players, he would start tomorrow. So you're going to take out a player that would have started the game for you. Dominic Solanke is not going to start this game. We have 2 games left in the Champions League phase against Dortmund and Frankfurt. Randall Kolo Muani, despite the fact that I have grown increasingly frustrated with him recently, has had his best games for Tottenham playing through the middle in the Champions League. So why would you not start Kolo Muani, through the middle tomorrow? I know I'm a bit fed up of him because it looks like he's not that interested and doesn't want to be here. Especially if Dominic Solanke is not fit to start, which he clearly isn't at the moment. Remember when Dominic Solanke came back from injury last year when he was laid off for, a month and a bit? With that ankle injury that he suffered in training under Postecoglou just before the Everton game, I think it was. Remember, it took him a good month and a half to get back up to speed. When Dominic Solanke came back from injury, and I love Dom, by the way, I really, really like him. Let's face it, he was pretty crap for like a month and a half, up until I think it was the Frankfurt game. He started to come back into his best self. So we're probably not going to see. Bear in mind, Solanke's been out for 6 months this time. Hasn't kicked a ball for Spurs. Well, other than obviously the Villa game and the West Ham game, hadn't kicked a ball for Spurs since August. What is the point of bringing him back in for 2 games when I'm pretty sure, and I might be wrong, please let me know in the comments, and let me know your thoughts on this in the comments as well, that if we do make it through to the playoff phase, we can then rejig the squad and register the likes of Conor Gallagher, new signings, etc. So I might be wrong on that, but please let me know whether maybe it's once you get through the playoffs. I don't know. I could be wrong on that. He said it's a tough one for Mathys, but he is not in the squad tomorrow. I just think that's absolutely baffling when... And I love Solanke, by the way. This is nothing against Dominic Solanke, and I want to see him back in a Spurs shirt because I think he is our best striker. But Mathys Tel and his camp are not happy at all with Thomas Frank's decision, and I totally understand why. It feels like, and I'm not saying that Mathys Tel has been brilliant for Spurs this season. He scored 3 goals in the Premier League against Bournemouth, against Leeds, and against Manchester United. He has shown signs, flickers, I think, in most of the games that he has played, right? I think most Spurs fans will probably agree with that, even if you feel like you don't rate him maybe as highly as some others. I think we'd all probably agree. And it probably says more about the quality of the squad at the moment, that we are getting more and more excited about what we're seeing from Mathys Tel. And I don't doubt that. But I genuinely do believe in him as a talent. I think he is a goal threat. I think he plays with the right sort of mentality. He's the sort of Tottenham player that we want to see in this difficult time because he is not afraid to take players on, to shoot. I think that was reflected in the boos that rang out when he was substituted on Saturday against West Ham. If Thomas Frank's not looked at that and thought, well, maybe if I want to try and keep my job, if I should probably, for the next 2 games at least in the Champions League, keep this guy around. Because the fans clearly like him. I think it's a baffling decision to make, again against West Ham on Saturday. I'm not saying that Tel was great or anything, but Solanke did nothing when he came on. And I think, I'm not holding that against Solanke. It's just not, he's clearly not fit to start at the moment. And he wasn't even going to start anyway, judging by the comments that Thomas Frank had made. But Mathys Tel, when the backs are against the wall, you want someone like him, the character that he has shown, and the shit that he's dealt with this season, from being left out of the Champions League squad in the first place, which I sympathise with Thomas Frank at the time, because I think it was probably Tel missed out more as a reflection of our own poor squad management and squad building as opposed to anything else. It was a brutal decision that had to be made, which felt unfair, and maybe there were other players that could have been left out, but I don't think anybody really, held it against Thomas Frank. But this, I just think when you are where you are, when you've got a player that the fans are so clearly, pretty unanimously behind, I think, and the fan base is so clearly not unanimously behind you. I think I said it in the video earlier and yesterday that I think this is the most united I've ever seen a Spurs fan base around moving on from a manager. I just think it's absolutely baffling, really, to be honest. And I think if I'm Mathys Tel, I'm going in there and demanding a loan move straight away. I don't think he'll get it. I hope the club don't sanction it. And honestly, obviously, again, like kind of tied into that, all of the mess that we're seeing at the moment is distracting from the fact that we still haven't made an attacking signing this January window, which was seemingly the priority going into the window, and we've lost Kudus, and we've lost Johnson, and we've lost Richarlison. So what on earth is going on there? You can't afford to let Mathys Tel go, but do you blame him for wanting to leave? I don't. I feel like Mathys Tel, when he's been given opportunities, is, all right, he might not have scored a goal in every single game, but 80% of the time has shown something towards grabbing them. Like when he came on against Slavia Prague, when he was included in the Champions League squad in that game, I thought it was good. Came in and cutting off the left-hand side, having shots. He's played against Dortmund. He knows kind of the pace of the German league. I think it's an opponent that he'd be looking to prove himself against tomorrow. I just find it absolutely baffling. And then we go to Frankfurt next week. Again, another team that he played well against in the Europa League last year for us. Had that shot that was curled, that was tipped wide and played pretty well in that game. And again, is used to going to that sort of environment and playing against Bundesliga opposition. I find it baffling when Dominic Solanke is so clearly, and look, Frank's seen him in training and we're not, but from the evidence of the last couple of games where Dominic Solanke has come on, he has not looked fit. Or certainly not fit enough to warrant making this decision, in my opinion, to upset one of the bright young talents at the football club who has played well, especially recently. He's been our brightest spark in attack recently, which again doesn't say a hell of a lot. But when you're in the mire like we are, you want something to get behind. And you can get behind young players. You can get behind that. You can live with their mistakes and inconsistencies a little bit more. I don't think the same can necessarily be said about how fans maybe view Wilson Odobert. But I think that's maybe because Odobert is slightly more timid and I think clearly more anxious when he plays, whereas I think Tel really does give the fans something to get behind. And again, I kind of want to come on to some of the other comments that Thomas Frank made. He said, when your back is against the wall, you fight. I've just been feeling the trust along the way. I've said that every press meeting, I had lunch with Nick, Johan and Vinay today, and all good. I know it's all part of the media circus. What part of the media circus is maybe not 60,000, but the entire South Stand on Saturday against West Ham? I was there. You were there. We all witnessed it. I did. Some joined in. A large majority joined in. You're getting sacked in the morning. That's not the media circus. That's your own fan base that you are clearly, at the moment, struggling to be in touch with. And I'm not saying that he's just brought Solanke back in on a whim and he's not thought about it. But it's just clearly showing that disconnect between the fans and the club when there is a player that everyone is so clearly behind and wants to do well and wants to be seen to be deserving of more minutes or has done enough to be deserving of more minutes but wants to see rewarded with more minutes. And then that's world-class gaslighting to me. It's not just about the media circus. In fact, when you look at, I'll try and get the tweet up now, every man and his dog in the mainstream media at the moment is defending him. If you look at if you look at Sky, if we go on Sky Sport, whether it be on Sky Sports News or Sky Sports Premier League, let's scroll down here, right? You got Michael Dawson, a club ambassador. I don't actually know what he said, but there was another one that I was looking for. Was it this morning? Hold on, bear with me one sec. Bear with me. Should Thomas Frank be given more time given his initial slow start at Brentford? Stephen Kelly, who I like Stephen Kelly, played for Tottenham, has done work for the football club, coming out and defending him, talking about the circumstances, the injuries. There was another one about the injuries when they asked a journalist. I can't remember where it was. Was it here? Should Spurs' ever-growing injury list be taken under consideration regarding their poor form and Thomas Frank's uncertain future? So the mainstream media, to a large extent, are kind of sticking up for him. It's the classic, like, pundit spiel when it's so clear that they haven't watched your team, kind of coming out and going, yeah, but he's got a load of injuries at the moment. He's a good man. He did really well at Brentford. I'll back him to turn it around, without actually looking into any of the nuance as to why Spurs fans are upset with what we're seeing, looking at these kind of little things. And you don't expect every single pundit to be so in tune with what fan bases are thinking. But this is the importance of fan media, right? Because we are far more in touch with what we feel, obviously, and what's actually going on at the football club and how our fans feel about it. The mainstream media, to an extent, don't really have a clue about that. They don't have a clue about why things like this will annoy us, because the media have stuck up for him basically the whole time. And again, I'm not saying, look, I've been Thomas. The point I started to turn on Thomas Frank was around Arsenal away, or Chelsea away was sort of like, Chelsea at home, sorry, was like, that was horrendous. Arsenal, the cowardly way that we approached that, in terms of the team selection and the approach to that game, and the lack of fight that we showed, was absolutely horrendous. And it got worse and worse and worse from there. But it feels like there's been more and more kind of media backing of him throughout that time. Because obviously the scrutiny has ramped up from Spurs fans. They're hearing the boos. Obviously what happened at Fulham, what happened in the FA Cup game, what happened at the weekend against West Ham and all that kind of stuff. And I get it to an extent, right, why some of these guys will come out and stick up for Thomas Frank, because they might be ex-managers, coaches themselves, and they know what it's like to be in the hot seat. But I just think that he's so far out of time. I feel like I'm losing my mind here. Because you talk about the media circus. This kind of comes back to the point that I was making at the weekend about Vinay Venkatesham. I think it found it quite easy probably to support Mikel Arteta through those early days at Arsenal, when it almost did get as dark as what we're seeing right now in that second season. But obviously they won an FA Cup and those kind of things. But obviously Arteta was a younger manager plying his trade. Maybe you want to give him more time. I get that, whatever, right? But obviously there was so much noise and so much groundswell on social media around wanting to get Arteta out and all these kind of things from the Arsenal fans. I think if Arsenal fans were in that stadium in the Emirates during that period, then I think that they might have had to buckle under the fan pressure. They've not quite done that yet at Spurs, even though they're so clearly divided and don't actually know what they're doing. And again, I think Frank, like I said, I've got sympathy for him tomorrow, because the club's terrible decision-making are using him as almost the lamb to the slaughter to kind of hide behind, really. And he'll probably end up getting sacked anyway. Or I don't know. I mean, I don't want to repeat the points that I made in the video earlier, but what happens if we do win tomorrow? Like, what happens there? But Frank to come out and say, and ignore what the fans actually said and just say that it's all media noise, we can kind of shut that out, is almost like brief from Vinay of like how they dealt with the Arsenal thing, because there wasn't fans in the stadium. It was all online noise. It was all media noise around Arteta. They could kind of block that out because it wasn't in their face. It wasn't paying customers coming and shouting it and screaming it towards you in the stadium, saying you're getting sacked in the morning. I really don't like getting this angry and irate about managers and players. I feel like I'm quite calm, but I really can't live with what I'm seeing the last few days. I find it so frustrating and so jarring. And, I haven't really been like this on this channel before, but I'm really pissed off. And I was a big believer in Thomas Frank. I really was. But he's not dealing with this well. It's clear the job is too big for him. And like I said, I do have sympathy with him. And all of those external factors that the media are talking about the injuries and stuff, I get it. Of course, you do have to factor that in. But since he's been here, we've brought in 5 first-team players that I think a lot of other managers would have craved for in previous eras, when we failed them more on the recruitment side, far more than what we failed Frank, really, to be honest. And Ange, as much as, again, I don't want to go down that road and the revisionism and all that kind of stuff, because Ange managed things badly as well, and obviously won us the Europa League and all that kind of stuff. Amazing, and I'll always be thankful of him for that. But obviously it's still miserable going last season. As a season ticket holder going and watch those games, you can't check out of it. You serve it up shit every single week when you're paying some of the most expensive season ticket prices. It's not fair on the fans. And it's not fair on the fans who've paid 70 quid like myself tomorrow to go and watch that game, to be so in the dark about what's going on, and it's just it's crazy. But my point is that it's easy for them to kind of just put it over there and say it's all part of the media circus when they're not listening to what the actual fans are saying. And Ange got killed in the media last year and said the injuries aren't an excuse and all these kind of things. I find it really frustrating. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. There's going to be a new episode of Only Tottenham out tonight where me and Seb are going to talk about this. So make sure to go and subscribe and get your questions in now as well on Twitter for us to answer, because we're just about to go and hit record. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video, which we'll be talking about after the Borussia Dortmund game. Nice one.